Hey guys, my name is Thomas Brush. I'm the creator of a game called Pinstripe, and I'm also working on a game called Once Upon a Coma. And I love talking about the creation of my games, but today I want to talk about a game that blows my freaking mind, and that's Cuphead. And we all know about Cuphead, and we're all impressed by Cuphead, but I want to open up the hood of Cuphead and talk about the creation of this game, and more specifically, the creators of this game. These people have incredible artistic integrity. I have never been so inspired by developers. They don't care, they just want to make a great game. And so let's open up the hood of Cuphead in this episode of Devs Play. Cuphead has convicted me as a game developer. And I'm not just saying that, I've really had a huge heart change this morning working on this video. Cuphead's team had artistic integrity through and through. They didn't care about the game's performance. They didn't do what AAA industry does, which is they think about bottlenecks, schedules. They think about, is the game commercially viable? Are we going to recoup what we invested? Blah, blah, blah. All those things can pervert a game and make a game not very special. But what Cuphead did is they made a very special game, and they believed in their vision. And ultimately, guys, they believed in you. They believed that you were smart enough to understand their strange 1930s, jazzy, weird, strange, extremely difficult project. They believed that you would get it. That is artistic integrity. So let's dive a bit deeper into the first fun fact and explore that artistic integrity. The Cuphead creators were making a game for them. I mean, that's really the best way that I can describe it. Sometimes I get caught in this dishonest rabbit hole in my mind where I tell myself that the only person who's going to see a flaw in my game is me and that the audience just isn't smart enough. This is ultimately, it's a lie, and it's disrespectful to the audience. The creators of Cuphead treated the audience with a high level of respect. They treat you and I like we're geniuses, both in our reception of the art style and also the ability to just play ridiculously challenging run-and-gun type bosses. I mean, the 1930s art style itself is so true to form that it's baffling.
Just what makes a 1930s design, so these are what I always keep in mind when designing. They're just broad general rules that I try to follow whenever I'm doing any kind of design for the game. But of course, any rule can be broken, but for the most part.
Now, if I had to choose an animation style for a game with a tight budget, Cuphead's is the last I would ever choose. And this is because modern cartoons are using simplistic, stylistic tricks to make up for a fast turnaround with a smaller budget. Even in 2D game animation, you can save time using Spine 2D, Unity, or even Blender and Maya, and we simply use tweening to quickly move bones to get the job done. This economical style of 2D animation is not really trying to mimic a 3D object, whereas Cuphead and 30s cartoons in general, they use something called rubber hose animation. Basically, everything is round, everything is smooth, and mimics a third dimension. Now, the animator Jake Clark obviously knows both budget-friendly animation styles, and that's rigging and bones, but he also understands traditional animation styles. I mean, the guy has a degree in 2D animation and has worked on Mother Up on Hulu, he's worked on Turbo Fast on Netflix, and Breadwinners for Nickelodeon, so he knows his stuff. All of these cartoons appear to use both traditional animation combined with tweening and rigging. So it's not like he couldn't have just done that for Cuphead. It's not like he couldn't have just used tweening and rigging and hoped we didn't see behind the curtain to see his tricks. Rather, he was true to the traditional 30s form. He was honest, and it paid off. So really quick, guys, before we begin our next fun fact, I want to talk about something that drives me a little bit crazy, and that's the assumption by some in the gaming community that we don't really need to dress nice. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to dress nice, but I want it to be easy and I want it to be comfy. And that's possible with Cuts clothing, and I'm actually wearing a Cuts t-shirt right now. Cuts makes premium basic Henleys and tees, and they instantly upgrade your wardrobe. I am super picky about my t-shirts, so you can trust me when I say that Cuts clothing is hands down my favorite brand of t-shirts. I mean, I was the one who reached out to them for this sponsorship. So if you guys want 15% off your first order, use the promo code ATMOS, that's ATMOS, using the link in the description. Thanks so much, Cuts, for supporting this channel and this video. The inspiration for Cuphead is an endless supply of 1930s cartoons. So the studio at MDHR, they got a ton of inspiration, and that includes some animations like Moth and the Flame, or even the Betty Boop cartoon series. And they seemingly spent as much time researching and studying these old cartoons as they did making the game. And it wasn't just one dude doing all of this. Both the creative director, Chad Moldenhauer, and the animator, Jake Clark, they worked together to illustrate and animate to ensure that the style is true to form. It was a symbiosis of modern and traditional minds, all merging into one cohesive package. Now here's the thing about making a cohesive game. It's often easiest to achieve this with one art director who is also the illustrator and the animator, and in my case, also the musician for the soundtrack of the game. And I've seen this firsthand with both of my games, Pinstripe and Coma. But somehow the Cuphead team not only followed the creative direction of dead people, for example, the Moth and the Flame director Burt Gillette, but also they followed each other, most of whom were actually close friends and family members. This is rare for an indie game, and you certainly wouldn't guess this level of cohesion was possible by looking at the amount of inspiration and the amount of minds involved in Cuphead. Now, when I looked into the recording of the Cuphead soundtrack, I was honestly blown away and I was jealous. And its creation is honestly the complete opposite of my work. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my music style, but I use software instruments. I use a MIDI keyboard and Logic Pro. Almost none of my work is composed on paper and recorded live with dozens of musicians. Now, this is true for most indie titles and many films and AAA games. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the Cuphead soundtrack is made up completely of original jazz recordings composed by Chris Madigan and recorded live in studio. There are over 2.5 hours of fully composed music written specifically for Cuphead. They used a 13-piece big band, 10-piece ragtime ensemble, and a solo pianist. Oh, and they also have a singer. Now, how does a small studio overcome such a seemingly big budget hurdle as a live jazz ensemble? Well, I guess it's important to know the right people and know that they have integrity and that they're passionate about what they do. This kind of ensured the project vision was not perverted and the budget wasn't blown out of the water. Now, this was certainly true for the team as well as the composer.
Chris Madigan, the musician, he grew up 5 or 6 blocks down, so we played games together our whole life. He went on to be
a jazz master,
a
classically
jazz
trained
musician,
percussion.
Trained. It was just an easy mix because we knew we want a jazz soundtrack. We need somebody who we know we can trust, who also understands what video games sound like. So we gave him the reins.
And it was baby steps for him too, because originally the game was going to be 8 bosses.
Yeah.
We said we just need 8 tracks, and he said, "Oh, that's manageable," but it kind of ballooned into over 50 tracks.
Now, Chris Madigan is one of those humble artists who doesn't really like to call himself a professional. Seems like he's always trying to become the best musician he can be and never really settles for less.
And I think I was the only musician that they knew, basically, so that was the...
Convenient.
And it's a cool thing when a musician's artistic integrity matches the rest of the team's. He didn't just go with his gut when writing this 30s style of music and write music that he thought sounded like 30s music. He actually spent a lot of time scouring YouTube videos and listening to 30s music. And he also read Gary Lindsay's Jazz Arranging Techniques book to ensure he was staying true to form. By the way, this jazz technique stuff looks super boring and technical, so props to Chris for that. Now, as most of you know, Cuphead kind of blew up at E3 in 2014. It did what few indie games did right. The art style was so beautiful, breathtaking, so unique, it really couldn't be ignored. But it failed in the gameplay arena. So the demo was kind of a letdown, and the game basically only contained bosses, and there really wasn't any platforming or levels. Now, you and I probably know the feeling, right? Where we try and use our forte to mask any issues with gameplay. So in my case, I really lean heavily on my art and my music because those are the things I feel like I'm talented at, but my gameplay kind of suffers. And I've actually launched games where I knew the gameplay suffered, but I just sort of trusted that the things that were good about the game would mask the bad things. But what Studio MDHR did, and again it comes back to artistic integrity, what they decided to do was take the project back to the drawing board. This is an especially risky move, considering the creators mortgaged their homes to pay for the game, while also knowing full well that reworking hand-drawn frame-by-frame art was infinitely more challenging than just reskinning and reworking rigged models.
And then here's the final animation. It's 32 drawings on 32 pieces of paper, which I would then scan them, I would send them off, and then they would be inked by hand onto 32 more pieces of paper. And that is why we're not done the game yet.
Believe it or not, in putting together this video, I had a whole section discussing how you could tell Cuphead was made by individuals who knew what they were doing. I think I even used the word veteran. But I was definitely wrong here. The two brothers, Chad and Jared, they had never made a game before. I'm sitting here thinking how crazy my family and my friends would have thought I was if I mortgaged my house creating a game, especially when I've never made a game before. And that just shows how much bravery this team had in creating this game. Now, considering the game sold over 1 million copies in the first month, I'm thinking I need to start making more stupid decisions.
We weren't too nervous because there was a chance that maybe people didn't like that type of game or didn't really love the style. And we knew that going in, so it was more of just let's release this and see what happens and just sit back. Even if people said this is not a game I ever want to see being created, we still believed in it so much that we were going to finish it. So there was definitely no anxiety or nervousness. There was just curiosity. I think it's more curiosity, is just of what people would say.
This experience, this freedom of thought, if you will, is I think what ultimately made this game a marketing machine. One of the biggest takeaways of looking into Cuphead's creation is my realization that Cuphead's uniqueness came completely out of left field and essentially forced every press outlet, every YouTuber to share it with their audience. The art style itself begs for attention, and ultimately everything about the art style, everything about the soundtrack, everything about the gameplay, it was a gamble. Part of me feels like a gamble like this can really only be made from individuals who really don't care about the financial outcome of the game. Essentially, outsiders with an insatiable curiosity and ultimately unwavering integrity.